You're a joke, man. A complete joke. And you think you're a leader. The US soldiers' words sliced through the silence of the crowded terminal like a blade. Everyone turned. Cameras lifted. Gasps filled the air. Burkina Faso's president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, stood still, a flag folded tightly in his hands. The body of Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo, Burkina Faso's fallen hero, had just been offloaded from the military cargo plane. The air was thick with sorrow and the weight of sacrifice. But this was something else entirely. Traoré didn't flinch. His eyes, dark and steady, met the soldiers. The man wore the uniform of the 101st Airborne Division, his face flushed with fury or pride, or maybe both. Behind him, a group of US personnel stood awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or vanish. The US flag hung behind them, bold and bright. Cameras were rolling. Phones were out. This was no longer a moment of mourning, it was a moment of confrontation. You think you can just walk into our country, shake a few hands, collect your soldier's body, and walk out like some kind of hero? The soldier sneered, stepping forward. You're a dictator, man. You don't get respect just because you wear a uniform. For a long, gut-twisting moment, no one moved. The American press had been invited to cover the repatriation ceremony as a rare symbol of international cooperation. Instead, they were witnessing an international scandal unfold before their very eyes. A world leader being mocked, humiliated, at the airport. Traoré's lips parted slowly. But before he could speak, a cry rang out from behind the crowd. Then, shouting. A scuffle. Someone ran. Another soldier grabbed their weapon. And just like that, chaos. But what happened next? No one could have predicted. To find out what happened in that instant, what Ibrahim Traore did in response to the insult, and what secret unraveled at that airport, stay right here. Because this story, it's just getting started. 6 days earlier, Ouagadougou. It was 4:27 a.m. when the call came in. Traoré was already awake. He rarely slept. He sat alone in his modest presidential quarters, sipping a bitter cup of Atik tea, his eyes scanning overnight reports from the northern provinces. Jihadist raids. Villages burned. Lives lost. The same tragic story, over and over. The voice on the line was shaky but clear. Sir, we've lost contact with Unit 13. Recon confirms. We have one Kia. It's Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo. Traoré froze. Ouedraogo wasn't just any soldier. He was the heart of the resistance in Burkina Faso's eastern corridor. Young, brave, fiercely loyal. His mother had once sold peanuts in the markets of Bobo Dioulasso. His brother was still in training at the Koudougou Academy. Ouedraogo wasn't just a name. He was a face, a story, a symbol of a nation trying to hold itself together. I want his body back, Traoré said. Sir, he died during a joint op with the U.S. team. The extraction is under their control. There was silence. Then, deliberately. Then I'm going to get him myself. 3 days later, the tarmac at Dover Air Force Base was hot with humidity. The sun beat down on the concrete like a drum. Traoré stepped off the private aircraft wearing his military beret, surrounded by 2 aides and a translator. He didn't bring security. He didn't need spectacle. He was here for a soldier. He expected cold stares. He didn't expect to see American soldiers whispering. He didn't expect to overhear them questioning his legitimacy, laughing about how a man like him had the audacity to call himself president. He didn't expect the smirks. But he held his head high. The ceremony was brief. The U.S. Honor Guard did their part respectfully. Ouedraogo's body was wrapped with both flags, American and Burkinabè. It was a symbolic gesture. A nice one. Then the mocking started. Quietly, at first. A smirk. A whisper, another warlord playing president. A snort of laughter. And finally, right before the media, the world, and the spirit of the fallen soldier, came the words that lit the fire. You're a joke, man. What would you have done in this situation? If you were Ibrahim Traore, surrounded by cameras, mocked in public, standing over the coffin of your soldier, would you respond with silence? With rage? With diplomacy? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. Just a few minutes in, wherever you're watching this from, let us know in the comments. Are you in the US, West Africa, Europe? We want to see how far this story is reaching. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. This is more than a story, it's a real-world reflection of power, pride, and how respect is earned. The moment the soldier's insult echoed across the tarmac, a hush fell so deep it felt like even the wind stopped moving. For half a heartbeat, it looked like Traoré would let it go. His jaw clenched, eyes scanning the growing crowd, the blinking red dots of recording phones. But then he stepped forward, just once, closing the gap between himself and the American soldier. He spoke in a calm, deliberate voice. "I came here for a soldier. Not applause. Not permission. And certainly not to be mocked on the soil of a country that claims to respect sacrifice." The soldier, surprised, took a step back. "But let me ask you," Traoré continued, "how many presidents do you know who come alone to carry home the body of one fallen man?" He paused, lowering his eyes briefly to the coffin between them. "You think I wear this uniform for power? No. I wear it for the thousands like him, who died so I could walk free. And today, I walk free because Karim Ouedraogo stood between evil and my people." The soldier's face twitched. Somewhere in the crowd, a U.S. officer stepped forward to intervene, but Traoré held up a hand. "I will not raise my voice. I will not fight you. But you will not disrespect my people's pain." With that, he turned back to the coffin. But what no one saw, not then, was the quiet tap his aide gave him. A signal. Something had gone wrong. Inside the transport crate carrying Sergeant Ouedraogo's body, something wasn't right. Back in the security office, the base commander reviewed the coffin logs. But confusion turned to tension. "Where's the biometric scan?" he asked. The corporal blinked. "Sir." "The scan," he repeated. "Every soldier repatriated passes through ID verification, both visual and digital. Where's Ouedraogo's data?" "There's nothing, sir. Just the name. No scan. No chip. No U.S. report. Nothing." At the same time, in a private lounge near the terminal, Traoré was opening a brown envelope just handed to him by his translator. It had been slipped into their hotel suite mailbox that morning. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo alive. And the timestamp, dated 3 days after the reported day of his death. Back in Ouagadougou, a quiet storm was building. The official report from the American side claimed the sergeant had died in a joint counterinsurgency operation near the Mali border. But Burkinabè intelligence was picking up chatter about a secret detainment facility in Djibouti. A black site. No name. No accountability. Just whispers. And in those whispers, the name Ouedraogo. Traoré stared at the photo in his hand. His face unreadable. Then he stood. "Get the plane ready. We're not going back to Ouagadougou." His aide blinked. "Sir, what do you mean?" "We're taking the body." "No," Traoré said. "We're going to Djibouti." Meanwhile, news of the confrontation at the airport was exploding online. Clips were going viral. A U.S. soldier mocking a foreign head of state during a military ceremony? It was political dynamite. American networks spun it as tensions abroad. In Burkina Faso, it lit up radio talk shows and flooded WhatsApp groups. But no one outside of Traoré's tight inner circle knew the truth. The man in the coffin might not be Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo. In a military hangar in Djibouti, deep underground beneath layers of restricted access, a man sat handcuffed to a steel bench. His face bruised, his uniform shredded, but his eyes alive. "Name?" barked the interrogator. "Silence." "I said name." The man raised his head. "You already know who I am," he whispered. The interrogator sighed and scribbled something on a clipboard. He stood, motioned to the guards. As he left the room, he muttered under his breath, "Traoré's gonna tear the sky apart when he finds out." And that's exactly what happened next. Because as the presidential jet rerouted silently over the Red Sea, Ibrahim Traoré wasn't thinking about diplomacy anymore. He was thinking about betrayal. He was thinking about a young man who might have been captured, not killed. And he was thinking about the Americans who lied to his face, over the body of a hero. Let me ask you this. What would you do if you found out a fallen soldier wasn't dead, but imprisoned by your supposed allies? Drop your take in the comments. We're reading every one. The jet descended into Djibouti under the cover of darkness. No national anthem. No parade. No diplomatic handshake waiting on the tarmac. Captain Ibrahim Traore stepped off the plane in silence, flanked only by his translator, an intelligence advisor, and a man no one recognized, one of Burkina Faso's elite shadows. A ghost soldier. The kind of man who doesn't exist on paper, but who knows how to make people disappear. They didn't land at the official Djibouti Ambuli International Airport. This was a private military airstrip, unmarked, leased to a U.S. contractor. Quiet, efficient, hidden. Traoré's people had traced the movement of certain aircraft, private, unlisted flights, moving in and out of this base over the last 72 hours. The same route the coffin had taken. And now they were on the ground, without permission, in a country crawling with American and French influence. "We have one shot," Traoré said quietly as they crossed the tarmac, "before they try to bury this." Back in the States, the story was still growing. Morning news anchors ran segments on the airport clash. Commentators debated whether the U.S. soldier should face consequences. On social media, the moment of mockery had become a meme, but beneath the jokes, the tone was shifting. Some began asking, why was Traoré really in the U.S.? What happened to that soldier? But the truth was still hidden, until a whistleblower cracked. An anonymous post appeared on a military forum late that night. One that said, "The guy they're burying isn't who they think it is. And the real one, we saw him. Alive. Talking." It was taken down within an hour. But not before screenshots went viral. Inside the Djibouti compound, the tension was suffocating. Traoré's team had located a secure warehouse camouflaged behind a contractor's office. Satellite scans showed the same vehicle that transported the coffin now parked inside. Whatever this place was, it wasn't for storage. "I need eyes," Traoré said. The ghost soldier nodded and vanished into the shadows. Minutes later, he returned, face unreadable. "There's a holding room. Inside, 5 cells. One of them has a man matching Ouedraogo's profile. Alive. Injured. No gods." Traoré clenched his jaw. "We move now." But just as they turned toward the compound, spotlights burst on. Sirens howled. A voice boomed from hidden speakers. "Step away from the facility. You are trespassing on U.S. government property. This is your final warning." Traoré didn't flinch. He raised a small radio and spoke into it once. A drone high above clicked to life, its camera focused squarely on the compound's main door. "Broadcast it," he said. "Now." Back in Burkina Faso, in cafes, homes, and roadside kiosks, the live feed lit up. A covert video, grainy but real, showed a man in a filthy military uniform being led into a room. His voice, cracked but unmistakable, said 2 words. "Je suis vivant." I am alive. It was Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo. And with that one sentence, the entire story flipped. The U.S. had declared him Kia. They'd shipped a body, staged a ceremony, allowed a foreign president to kneel over a casket, knowing the real man was still breathing. But why? That question echoed across both continents. Was it a cover-up? A mistaken identity? Or something more sinister? Traoré stood just beyond the floodlights, eyes narrowed. A black SUV screeched into view. Men stepped out, armed, nervous, American. One of them was the same soldier who'd mocked him at the airport. He looked shaken now. "Mr. President," the soldier said, no longer smug, "we can talk. We didn't know. We were following orders." Traoré raised a hand. "You spoke loudly before. Now you listen." He walked past the soldier, toward the compound gate, and raised the Burkinabè flag he'd carried since leaving Ouagadougou. "This is not about diplomacy. This is about justice. You will not hide him. You will not silence him. He is coming home." But just as the doors unlocked, just as Traoré stepped inside, A single gunshot rang out. Everyone froze. Inside the compound, chaos erupted. Traoré rushed down the hall. The guards were shouting. One of them had fired. But at who? He turned the corner and saw the cell door open. Ouedraogo was on the floor, not moving, and standing over him, a man in civilian clothes, a phone still recording in his hand, his face pale with horror. He said someone tried to poison him. I thought, he just collapsed, I didn't touch him. Traoré dropped to his knees. Ouedraogo's eyes fluttered, unfocused. But then he whispered, "It wasn't an accident. I saw something. I wasn't supposed to. His voice gave out. His head fell back. And Traoré turned to the camera. "Get a doctor," he snapped. "And start recording. From this moment on, no one lies. Not anymore." The medics rushed in, boots slamming against concrete, their voices urgent but controlled. Pulse, faint but present. Get an 4 started. Ibrahim Traore stepped back as the team swarmed over Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo's body. He didn't move. His face was stone. But inside, a storm was roaring. The soldier who mocked him at the airport hovered behind, stunned into silence. The civilian with the phone, the same one who'd captured Ouedraogo's last words, was trembling, still live-streaming despite his shock. The moment had already reached millions. Ouedraogo was alive. Barely. And he had just said something that made Traoré's blood run cold. "It wasn't an accident. I saw something." Traoré turned to his advisor. "Get me access to the surveillance logs. I want to know what he saw." 4 hours later, inside a makeshift briefing room built into a repurposed bunker beneath the compound, Traoré sat across from a man who'd once been a U.S. liaison in Burkina Faso. Former, now. His name was Ryan Mills, a diplomatic attaché who had quit just 3 weeks earlier under medical leave. But he hadn't left Africa. He'd disappeared into Djibouti's shadows. And now, he was ready to talk. "There was a mission," Mills began. "Not sanctioned. Not on record. A team went into eastern Burkina Faso. High-value target acquisition. The Americans were using local intel assets, some loyal, some not. Ouedraogo was assigned as a guide. Not a soldier. Not even supposed to engage." "What changed?" Traoré asked. "They saw something they weren't supposed to. A convoy. Not jihadists. American contractors. Weapons transfers." "Transfers to who?" Mills paused. "To both sides." The words landed like a hammer. "You're telling me the U.S. was arming both the Burkinabè forces and the extremists?" "Not the U.S. military," Mills said carefully. "Private actors. Greedy ones. They needed the conflict to stay alive. The longer you keep fighting, the more contracts they get. Logistics. Intel. Surveillance tech. Ammunition. You cut the war short. They lose billions." Traoré leaned forward. And when Karim saw that, he became a threat. Outside, Ouedraogo was stable, though unconscious. A nurse confirmed what Traoré feared. The sergeant had been slowly poisoned. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to wear him down. Silence him over time. It was meant to look like stress. Battle trauma. Natural death. But now the world had seen him, speaking. Now they knew. And the ones responsible? They were already trying to spin it. In Washington, D.C., a press conference was hastily arranged. The White House press secretary walked to the podium, trying to keep her composure. "We are aware of the incident involving Captain Ibrahim Traore and Sergeant Ouedraogo. An internal investigation is underway to determine the facts and hold accountable any individuals who acted outside the bounds of U.S. policy." Reporters shouted questions. Was the soldier captured or rescued? Why was he declared dead? Is the U.S. funding both sides of the Burkina Faso conflict? The press secretary's answers were vague, carefully worded, legally safe. But back in Djibouti, the truth was already spilling like wildfire. That evening, Traoré sat beside Ouedraogo's bedside. The young man stirred, whispering a few words, his throat dry as sand. "They wanted the map." Hidden Arms Depot, near Fadan Gourma. Traoré's eyes narrowed. Why? Proof, weapons from both flags, US and Russian. The implications hit him like a train. This wasn't just greed. It was geopolitical theater. Two superpowers quietly feeding both ends of a burning fuse, using Burkina Faso's war as a proxy playground. And the world had no idea. Traoré stood, fists clenched. They thought they could turn us into a board game, feed our children bullets, and walk away wearing suits. His advisor asked softly, "What will you do now?" Traoré looked toward the camera someone had just set up across the room. "I'm going to speak to the world, raw, unedited, and I'll show them everything." The video went live the next morning. A single camera, one man, one voice. "I am Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso. I came to repatriate a soldier. I found a global lie." He held up a document, Ouedraogo's falsified death report. Then a photo, the weapons depot. Then the time-stamped footage of Karim alive. And finally, the names. He named the contractors, the brokers, the companies laundering arms to both sides. "You have fed off our blood, and you called it aid. We will not die quietly." In less than an hour, the video had 50 million views. International outrage erupted. Journalists demanded answers. The UN scrambled. The African Union called for sanctions, not on Burkina Faso, but on the corporations funding the conflict. Traoré's face was now a global symbol of defiance. But behind the scenes, someone wanted him dead. That night, as they prepared to transport Ouedraogo safely back home, a coded message was intercepted by Traoré's ghost soldier. Translation: Target confirmed. Presidential jet. Initiate before departure. Someone was planning to take him out before he left Djibouti airspace. If you've stayed with us this far, like the video, subscribe, share it. The jet was fueled and waiting. Burkina Faso's presidential aircraft sat under the black sky of Djibouti, its engines quiet, the tarmac bathed in eerie orange from distant floodlights. Traoré stood at the top of the stairs, his figure silhouetted against the cabin lights. Inside, Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo, still unconscious, lay under guard. His four was steady. The monitors were stable. But outside, everything was unstable. Traoré's ghost soldier stepped close, whispering into his ear. "We intercepted 3 comms. 2 from a private American firm. 1 from a Russian asset. Both said the same thing: eliminate Traoré before the plane leaves. No names, no logos, just shadow threats. They're scared," Traoré said, looking out over the field. "Good." Minutes later, inside the cockpit, the pilot was running through his pre-flight checklist when he froze. The left auxiliary system, disabled. Autopilot, jammed. Navigation, flickering. Sabotage. "Sir," the pilot whispered into the intercom, "they've hit the systems. Someone inside the ground crew tampered with the avionics." Traoré didn't flinch. He turned to his advisor. Plan B. Plan B was a convoy. 3 decoy vehicles. 1 real one. Each vehicle would leave the airstrip in different directions under heavy fog from the airstrip's emergency exhaust coolers. The medics disguised Ouedraogo as an aid worker, oxygen tube tucked under his scarf. Traoré wore civilian clothes for the first time in months. Hooded, quiet, nondescript. As the jet engines roared to life in a bluff, Traoré slipped into an armored Toyota Land Cruiser and vanished into the Djibouti night. They were no longer escaping by air. They were going through the desert. 16 hours later, a caravan of dust entered northern Ethiopia. Inside a secured UN logistics vehicle sat Ouedraogo, finally conscious, holding a folded note in his hand, Traoré's handwriting. "If they want a war of truth, we'll give it to them." By then, the footage Traoré had released had ignited protests across Africa. Demonstrations outside embassies. Parliament hearings in the EU. Congressional inquiries in the US. Private defense contractors were named, shamed, and subpoenaed. But someone still wanted him dead. Back in Burkina Faso, as the presidential residence prepared for Traoré's return, A warning came from the intelligence unit. An assassin is already in Ouagadougou. We don't know who sent them, but they know the soldiers coming home. Traoré's response? Then let them come. I'll greet them myself. 3 days later, a live event was scheduled in the heart of Ouagadougou. No stage, no military ceremony, just one podium. And behind it, Sergeant Karim Ouedraogo, standing under his own power, weak but defiant, flanked by his mother, his younger brother, and a sea of people. Traoré took the mic. His voice calm, firm. They declared him dead. Not once, but twice. First with bullets, then with silence. But he stands here today because truth does not kneel. He pointed to the crowd, the cameras, the world watching. You've seen what they did. You know who profited. But now, we choose something different. We choose to fight with proof, with light, with the power of people who will not stay quiet. Then his eyes narrowed. And to those still hiding, still scheming, let me be clear. If you come for one of us again, you'll answer to all of us. The crowd erupted. But not everyone was clapping. From a rooftop across the plaza, a scope adjusted. The assassin lay prone, breath steady, finger twitching over the trigger. Target locked. Traoré. One shot. But just before the gun fired, bang! The rooftop door burst open. Traoré's ghost soldier tackled the shooter, wrestling the rifle away as the assassin screamed. One swift blow. Then silence. The ghost soldier radioed in. Threat neutralized. Later that night, alone in his office, Traoré finally allowed himself to exhale. Ouedraogo was safe. The truth was out. But the world, still watching, still doubting. His advisor entered quietly. What now, sir? Traoré looked up, weary but steady. Now, we rebuild. And we remind the world that even the smallest country can make the biggest noise. He looked at the television. International coverage. His face everywhere. Then he added, quietly, they laughed at the airport. A pause. Let's see who's laughing now. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this one, and share it with friends. Thank you for watching. And remember, the real power is always in the people.